Hi, welcome to Prime Recap. You are alone on an abandoned island being hunted by dozens of rabid dogs and your only shelter is an old house falling to pieces. Today we will recap the story of The Breed, from 2006. A couple is on their speedboat getting drunk and because of the effects of the alcohol, they end up getting lost. After some time adrift, they spot a large island in the distance and decide to disembark to try to get help. Not knowing what awaits her, the woman then decides to go ahead to try to find someone while her boyfriend stays at the dock tying up the boat. Walking through the forest, she manages to find a very suspicious installation surrounded by bars and barbed wires. Believing it to be some kind of military installation, the girl starts asking for help, but when she doesn't get an answer, she decides to go back to the forest and maybe find some shelter in the woods. In the middle of her search, the woman starts to hear strange noises coming from the surrounding trees and, afraid of being caught by some bloodthirsty predator, she starts to run extremely scared, but feeling that she is being surrounded, the young woman starts to ask for help from her boyfriend, who, unluckily for her, is too far away to hear. Realizing that her partner would not be able to save her, the girl tries to run again, but is easily caught by the mysterious creatures, who drag her by the legs to their lair. In the middle of the way, the woman tries to hold on to something and perhaps escape, but her fingers have been devoured by the beast and, unable to resist, she just gives herself up. In the distance, her boyfriend can finally hear his companion's agonizing cries of pain, but unfortunately it is already too late and there is nothing he can do to help. Unaware of the risk they are taking, Matt and John, two brothers who do not have the best of relationships, fly in their plane to this very island accompanied by their childhood friends Noah and Sarah, as well as Nikki, the younger brother's girlfriend. It turns out that before it was a desert, the island had a few residents, and among them was the brother's uncle. After many years without visiting the house, the group decides to spend the weekend at the abandoned home to have some fun away from civilization. When they arrive, the two brothers go to the garage where the generator is located and take the opportunity to see if their uncle's old car is still running, and are surprised to discover that after so many years inactive, the vehicle is still running, even if it needs some repairs. Inside the house, Sarah and Noah are responsible for storing the supplies and preparing a special drink to celebrate their arrival, but since the house is without electricity, they have to wait for the two brothers to turn on the generator before they can use the blender. As soon as Matt and John do the job, Sarah excitedly turns on the blender, but she doesn't even have time to celebrate. A few seconds after she manages to turn on the device, the power suddenly goes out. Not knowing what has happened, the couple of friends decide to go check the fuses in the basement that because of the lack of electricity is totally dark. Noah then uses his lighter to light the room and while they are exploring, they find a cellar with dozens of bottles of wine and decide to take them. After some more time exploring the place, the couple of friends manage to get to the box, find the blown fuse and start to replace it with a new one. But while Sarah is putting the object in place, Noah sees a bizarre doll and gets a big scare. But let's face it, who would keep a doll with a hooded appearance like that in a dark basement? After reconnecting the power, Sarah makes her drink and everyone starts to get drunk. After a while of swimming, the group goes to the balcony of the house where they watch John practicing target practice with his bow, until a beautiful German Shepherd puppy emerges from the middle of the woods, making the friends fall in love with such cuteness. In the middle of the night, as the drink they brought for the trip has run out, Noah goes to the kitchen to get one of the bottles of wine he found in the basement and when he opens the door, the puppy manages to run into the room along with him. While the man is opening the bottle, the once very docile little dog now seems enraged and begins to growl at the man. When Noah returns to the living room and starts to tell his friends about what happened, the little dog runs outside the house through a hole in the structure and moves towards the forest. Since she really likes the little animal, Sarah decides to go out and look for it together with John, who offers to help her. Using some flashlights, the couple of friends manage to find the puppy in the middle of the woods, but as they get closer, an adult dog jumps out of a bush on top of Sarah, knocking her to the ground. As John approaches to help his friend, the enraged animal bites the woman's leg for no apparent reason and then runs off into the woods with his puppy. Inside, thinking about the possibility of the animal being contaminated with the rabies virus, Matt and Nikki argue that they should return to town the next day to begin treatment and prevent Sarah from contracting the disease, but John says that medical care does not need to be immediate and because of that they could return after the weekend, but leaves the decision in the hands of Sarah, who thought the attack was to protect the puppy and did not want to disrupt the mini vacation of friends, opts to stay at the house until Monday. This was a very bad decision. During the early morning hours, John gets up to get a drink of water and finds Sarah visibly upset at the window. When he tries to talk to her, she doesn't answer and starts to approach him without saying a word, but as soon as she gets close to the man she starts to kiss him so hard that she hurts him. With John's groan and expression of pain, some trigger is activated in the girl's mind and she finally regains consciousness, asking him to leave. The next morning, the group of friends is having coffee and we can see that Sarah is ravenously and bizarrely hungry, even nearly piercing Noah's hand with her fork when he tries to get the last pancake. As soon as they finish their meal, John gets his bow for target practice in the woods, and since they were bored, the other men decide to go with him while Nikki stays to keep Sarah company. In the middle of the forest, the men can find no signs of other animals, and with nothing to do, Noah sits down on a log to maintain his camera, separating himself from the group. While cleaning the lens, the man begins to hear growling sounds around him. Worried, he begins to look for the source of the noise and finds himself surrounded on all sides by several dogs, and in an attempt to escape alive, the man runs through the forest until he trips over a root and is found by his friends. As soon as Noah counters about the dogs, the boyfriend of the woman who was devoured earlier appears behind them totally bloodied and says that the dogs don't want anyone on the island, but the man doesn't even have time to explain why. While he is talking, a huge dog jumps on his chest, knocking him down the hill and devouring him still alive along with his pack. The frightened trio run towards the house, and when they are almost there, they see the girls who were in the water also being chased by the animals. They then run to try to help them, and just as they are about to enter, one of the dogs manages to bite Nikki's leg, holding her leg by her pants. Trying to save her, John takes his bow and shoots an arrow in the direction of the satanic beast, but his shot ends up hitting the girl's calf, causing her enormous pain, but still managing to scare the creatures away. Once inside the house, Matt breaks the projectile with pliers and begins to remove it to bandage it. While preparing the bandages, the man tries to understand what was going on while telling his friends why that place is now a desert. Many years ago, a company rented a part of the island to build a kennel that would train some dogs to be guides for the visually impaired, but after a few years, one of the dogs ended up contracting the rabies virus, and, since everyone frequented the same environment, the sick animal contaminated other dogs that managed to escape from the training center. With dozens of dogs contaminated by the island, the kennel was closed and the island totally evacuated, becoming the desert that it is today. But since the contamination was at least a year ago, the dogs should have died by now. What Matt wonders now is, how are they still alive after being infected for so long? After the inconclusive conversation, Noah, who is totally hysterical, starts yelling that they should get medical help for the two girls who are injured, but the man's screams ended up attracting one of the dogs, which jumps out the window and knocks him to the ground. As soon as it gets up, the animal runs to Sarah, and when it is about to reach her, it is held by John at the last moment. Seeing that without his help his brother could also be hurt, Matt takes an iron bar and runs to them, shoving the piece of metal into the ribcage of the evil creature, which perish instantly. Realizing that the house is not safe, the group gathers their things, and as they are about to leave the house, they notice that two of the mad dogs are on the dock, right where the plane they used to go to the island is. Matt then says that they'd better wait for the animals to move away, but after a few seconds Noah looks out the window and sees the aircraft moving away with the tide. The dogs have bitten the rope that was securing the boat. Besides being bloodthirsty, the little dogs are diabolical. As they see no sign of the dogs and knowing that they could lose the plane in the middle of the ocean if they take too long to get to it, the group of friends go to the dock extremely apprehensive, and John jumps into the water to swim to the vehicle, but as he is approaching, the tide turns the aircraft and the man can see that the two dogs that broke the rope were actually hidden in the wing. The animals then jump into the water and begin to swim toward John, who needs desperately return to the dock so not to be caught. As soon as they are all on dry land, one of the satanic dogs jumps towards the group to attack them, but Noah manages to hit the beast in the ribs with his baseball bat, so they take advantage of the gap to return home and narrowly miss being caught. Knowing the capabilities of the hooded puppies, the group begins reinforcing the windows and cracks of the house with pieces of wood. As they finish the improvements, Noah tries to call the emergency services, but the cell phones are dead. Matt and John wrap the body of the dog that tried to attack Sarah in a cloth and throw it outside. With things apparently safe, they decide that the best chance to survive is to go to the other side of the island where there is a boat. Obviously that strange man who was attacked on the hill got there somehow, and they assume that the vehicle used by the man is precisely on this dock that is right next to the old kennel. Furthermore, Matt argues that even if there is no way out, they can still find some communication equipment on the premises. With the plan set, the men decide to go to the garage to try to start the old car one more time. But as they are leaving the house, the dogs from the deep web run towards the body that the brothers threw out and start eating them. That's right, besides being super intelligent, these mutant creatures eat everything, even members of their own gang. Seeing the satanic dogs outside, the trio returns home and decides to come up with another plan. Matt plans to go to the garage via a rope that connected the two buildings, but to do so he needs the pulley that was on the zipline outside. The man then takes advantage that the beasts are distracted with their feast and runs to the object to get it. Even trying to be as furtive as possible, he can be detected by one of the dogs, but manages to get back inside safe and sound. While Matt puts the pulley on the rope that is attached to the garage, even though Nikki is injured, she convinces her boyfriend that because it is lighter, she should check the car. With everything ready, the girl starts to climb down the rope and reach the other side, but the insatiable dogs see her hanging like a piece of meat in the butcher shop and run towards her while friends of the girl try to distract the dogs. As soon as she manages to get into the garage, Nikki gets into the car and tries to start it, but the vehicle gives no sign of life. At the same time, the dogs outside try hard to get in, and manage to make a hole in the gate big enough for them to get in. Nikki then exits through the sunroof and has to hang from the wooden structures of the garage to avoid being devoured. Once outside, the group pulls her back in, and while the vicious dogs are jumping up and down trying to get at her, John takes an arrow right through the heart of one of them. During the night, the power suddenly goes out, and believing that it is the fuse malfunctioning once again, Noah volunteers to go down to the basement to turn the power back on, and as soon as he gets downstairs, he begins to hear strange noises coming from where that puppet that seems to have come straight from the Warren Museum was. As Noah approaches the source of the sound, one of the dogs jumps on Noah's neck and tears chunks out of his throat, as well as crushing his windpipe and rupturing his jugular, extremely brutal. Hearing all the noise, Matt and John go to the basement entrance but find their friend already dead. They then lock the door to trap the dogs, but it doesn't do much good, because outside several dogs enter savage mode and start breaking the wooden reinforcements on the windows, thus gaining entrance to the house. The group then decides to run to the attic, but when they are almost there, Matt is caught by one of the demon dogs that jumps on his back and starts to bite him, but is saved by John, who manages to lock the animal away. With everyone on the top floor, the house is now completely taken over by the dogs, and since all they have left is the supplies that are with them in the attic, they need to come up with a plan to get out of there as soon as possible. As dawn breaks, the group comes out of the attic to check if the beasties were still in the house, but apparently they have all left, so the brothers go to the garage, and while John is at the wheel, Matt pushes the car until it finally starts. But with all that noise, the dogs manage to track them and begin a chase. The younger brother then jumps on the roof of the car and takes the bow with John to try to hit them, but when one of the animals climbs on the hood of the vehicle, John has to make a sharp turn, and since he didn't have much support, Matt ends up dropping the bow. With no way to fight the creatures, the man enters through the sunroof, but at that very moment the car shuts down on its own without having to get out to push it. John turns towards a cliff to pick up speed and try to restart it. Although it is a pretty stupid idea, it ends up working, and they narrowly manage to get out of this alive. With the car finally running, the brothers drive back to the house, but halfway there a bloodthirsty German Shepherd jumps into the car through the window and almost manages to bite Matt, but is saved by John, who throws the car to the side, causing the mutated creature to crash into a pole. Back at the house, Sarah has given up trying to survive and refuses to run away with them. Trying to convince her to change her mind, John goes up to her, but at that moment one of the dogs appears in the room, and determined to take revenge on the infection, the girl asks him to run away through the window while she stays to fight the beast, and even though he is reluctant, John ends up jumping. At that moment the dog jumps on Sarah's neck, who manages to defend herself by putting her arm in front of her. Knowing that unarmed she would have no way to eliminate the satanic beast, the girl decides to try to throw it out the window, but the two end up falling together and are pierced by a wooden stake. Realizing that they could not help their friend who is already lifeless, the trio get into the car and start driving to the other side of the island, while other hungry dogs appear to devour the skewered bodies. When they arrive on the other side, the group decides to enter the facility to try to radio for help, but during their exploration, they discover that it was not a kennel for training guide dogs, but a laboratory that was genetically modifying the animals to become fighting machines. It turns out that in fact the satanic dogs were never contaminated by rabies, they were modified to a point where they became uncontrollable. Realizing that they had exaggerated, the researchers decided to sacrifice the animals, but as they became extremely intelligent and strong, the mutant dogs managed to escape from the facility. Knowing the risk they would run if they decided to stay there, the group of scientists decided to just abandon the island and leave the dogs there. That's why they are so intelligent, and also why there are no other animals on the island. They were all extinct by the beasts. Anyway, as soon as they get to the radio, Nikki sees through the window that the transmitter tower cable is disconnected, and John volunteers to reconnect the wires. He then leaves the building, and while climbing up the building, he can see the couple's boat standing on the dock. When the man gives the signal, Nikki turns on the amplifiers to increase the radio's range, but when she presses the button a short circuit occurs, starting a fire in the wiring of the place and giving John, who fell from a considerable height, a huge electrical discharge. As the flames spread throughout the place, the dogs finally find them and manage to dig under the fence to attack John, who receives several bites. Seeing that his brother needed help, Matt grabs his baseball bat and runs to him to help him fight off the animals. Inside, Nikki opens the valve of a gas cylinder and lets the dogs in. When she feels there is enough fluid in the air to cause an explosion, she opens the door, allowing the gas to reach the flames, starting a combustion that kills all the dogs inside. Outside, Matt and John are surrounded on all sides, and just when they think they have no chance of surviving, Nikki appears with the car and runs over the dogs. She managed to survive the explosion by hiding just behind the door. With everyone in the car and knowing the location of the boat, the trio drives there while being chased by the dogs, but manage to arrive safe and sound at the dock and escape the island. But when they are on the high seas, the man finds a dog inside the boat. What would you do to survive? Do you think you could defeat these evil and extremely intelligent dogs? So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.